everybody. My name is Priya Iyer. I'm a brand supervisor at Raindrop Marketing, a branding and advertising firm in sunny San Diego. We're here today for our webinar series, What's Working Now, episode 3 out of 4. I'm here today with Danny Kim, our Director of People and Culture at Raindrop. Danny, thank you so much for being here. In this series, we've really been talking through some of the topics that have come up, especially during this COVID-19 situation. We're all sort of on this journey to better understand what marketing looks like, what the workspace looks like during this time. And today we're going to speak a little bit about our culture and how being virtual has affected and kind of changed the way that we're functioning during this time. So Danny, thank you for being here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background to start?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Priya. So my background is very nonlinear, but I think the through line has been a fascination for the way people work and the way people are motivated. And so I think early on, I was trying to figure out what the best way for me to do that. And honestly, I never knew about the field of human resources. I never knew the field of organizational psychology. That was never like in my mind or my purview per se. But as I finished up grad school, I realized that I needed to move towards kind of what allows people to be the best version of themselves. And so for the last several years, I've been doing organizational consulting, working with different companies, doing leader development, and about a year ago, Jacques and Adam called me and said, hey, we'd love to hire you as the director of people and culture. And I kind of said, I'm not really looking right now, but I'm curious. And, they basically said, Danny, your job is to champion our people. And I thought, what else is better for me than that? Like, I felt like all my education and all my experiences kind of led me to that. So that's a little bit about me. And I love being at Raindrop.
Yeah, we love having you. You're such an asset to the team. You make us all feel so seen and heard, and we really appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit more about your role. Can you speak a little bit to perhaps how Adam and Jack came to this place where they wanted to create a role like yours, how your role might differ from a more standard HR role, and also what makes it unique in that sort of agency world that we're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, our C-suite has done they're so future forward thinking,
Totally.
Carrie, Adam, and Jacques. I think that's the beautiful thing about this role, because oftentimes when organizations find a role like me, it's usually to do damage control. It's usually to say, okay, like put out the fire, like make sure we check the compliance boxes. But really, they were thinking, okay, we have something incredibly special here at Raindrop. Our culture is so unique. It's difficult to define at times, and at the same time, it's palpable. Even in my short time being at Raindrop, so many of the people I get to interview all say, man, I want to work there. Like, I want to work here. Like, something's magical here, and I want to be there. And I think they were thinking, okay, as our agency scales, as our clients get bigger, as we went from 35 to 45 to 55, they were thinking, how can we find someone unique that's solely focused on the people here that make Raindrop special? Everyone else in our agency, except for our director of finance, my counterpart, is client facing. You know what I mean? And so to a certain extent, they're creating deliverables, creatives. To a certain extent, they're client facing. They're billable hours, if you will, in agency world speak. But for me,
Sure.
all my hours are non-billable. Like, no one's paying for it other than Raindrop itself. And they said, we want to invest into someone that can help us think about our culture, our people, figure out what's working, what's not, help us find great talent. I think that's a big part of it, right? Because culture is a summation of the people and their values and their behaviors over time. And I think that it has been a crazy journey for me to kind of think through what's happening here that's special. How do I put my finger on it? How do I give language to it? And then at the end of the day, how do we retain that or continue to develop on that? So, and I think it's unique for agencies because I think, being a service industry in some senses, a lot of, the fact that maybe my allocation, it's an investment. Truly, it's an investment. The leadership was saying, we want to invest into a role that's solely pouring out into people. And so it's been a pleasure. And I think it's so future forward in the sense of what my role is.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, speaking as somebody who just joined the team about 4 months ago at this point, one of the biggest things that drew me to this company is that it's a people first culture and that
Yes.
our leadership team really drives from that place. So I think the investment in somebody like you to really, again, look out for the human beings that make up
Mhm.
this Raindrop space
Mhm.
it really speaks to that sort of guiding force.
Yeah.
So yes, we're so grateful that you're here, and we're so grateful to have someone like you
Mhm.
in the space. It's definitely unique. It's not, we don't see it across a lot of agencies. It is
Mhm.
something that makes our space special, like you
Yeah.
said. So grateful for that.
Mhm.
So speaking of our special space, let's talk a little bit more about our values. What are Raindrop's values, and
Yeah.
kind of speak to how those values have really been a guiding light during this remote
Yeah.
time, and how they've sort of been impacted and what we've really had to think about there.
Yeah, for sure. I heard this really good analogy. Jacques and I were on a podcast with a friend of ours, and he gave this analogy, and I think it's really appropriate for our conversation. He said, COVID-19, it's kind of like a snow globe. Those like ones that have like where it sets after some time, and if you like flip it
Yeah.
upside down, it like just disrupts everything, and all the junk that's on the bottom kind of floats to the top, and it has to distill
Yeah.
again. And feel like that's kind of what COVID has done for us. It's kind of like been disorienting, but it brings up things that maybe we wish we wouldn't have seen. And at the same time, it also brings out the best in us and shows us that our values are significant and important in this unique season. And so, we have three core values kind of internally, partner generously, own your future, and create strategically. And I think all three of those actually are important, not just in person, but as you're remote, and I think about that because, so for example, like when I think about partner generously, I think we value our being together. And at the same time, when you're remote, you kind of have to start thinking, how can I be generous, go over and above my job duties, with our team, having to pick up the slack in some areas, maybe picking up new clients or picking up different kinds of work. The other day I was talking to Tom, our head of production, and he's like, I'm filming, I'm right there in the weeds again, because we have to, and we have to meet our client needs. And I think that's a perfect example of partnering generously, and we still have the opportunity to partner generously. The second one, is own your future. And I think all of us are trying to figure out, what does the future look like? And yet at the same time, we need each other to get to where we want to go, right? Just the other day, we were talking at our status meeting and thinking about, a rising tide lifts all boats. We actually support one another. When some parts of our business seems to be sub-optimized, or maybe not as strong, or maybe our clients are struggling in that area, we have the opportunity to kind of say, you know what, we're all in this together. Like it's not an us versus them reality. And I think owning our future gives that space where we say, we get to do this together, and it's interesting. We've been using the language a lot, like own our future, like we're in this together, like we're building our future together because where some of us are working really hard, some of us have more time, some of us have been furloughed. But as we come back in, I'm hoping that we can really gain that sense of camaraderie and unity. And then lastly, create strategically. I mean, this is the time for us to do this together. I don't think, and I hope that leaders, as they're thinking about their remote contexts and work from home situations, I hope they recognize that there is a value being together. Whenever I interview somebody here or when I onboard them, I often say that, to what you just said, we are a people first organization. And what that means is we want to be together. One of our, kind of our core element, our essence is friendship. And all of us know, like Zoom and FaceTime and, phone calls and texts only go so far, but when you get together and you can embrace one another and you can have a cup of coffee or a meal together, like face to face, there's something about that that's unique. And I'm hoping that leaders can really think about what it means to be together. And I hope that there's there's a leaning in, not a leaning out towards that. And I think for
Yeah.
us at Raindrop, it's unique. We're unique in that sense. That's one of the things we value as an agency, is being together and creating together. And I'm so impressed by how our team has been able to collaborate and create strategically, whether that's through Zoom or different task management software that we have. I think that there's a real opportunity there that we're starting to see come to fruition. And so I'm really proud of our team, but I also recognize that we long to be together to a certain extent.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I mean, even just this interview, it would be nice if we could be in the same space to
Totally.
do it. And
Yeah.
I can definitely feel your energy through the computer, but obviously I wish I could feel it in person.
Yeah.
So, I absolutely hear that. And, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting experience to kind of figure out what we can maintain, but also understand what's different and what we have to adjust. And it really gives us something to look forward to in the
Yes.
end. So,
Totally.
looking forward to a time where we can all be physically together, those values. Can you speak a little bit more to kind of what those challenges have looked like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as human beings, we are really good storytellers. And when there is a lack of information, we connect dots sometimes that aren't there. And I think
Yeah.
that's true in all contexts, like with a partner, with your family member, with a friend. You're like, why did they text me back? And you start making up these stories, and and they're like, oh, I was just like busy, or my phone died, and you're like, wait, I thought you didn't like me anymore, and we in the absence of information, we make up stories. And I think that's true for all human beings, in the study of psychology and sociology. But for me, what I think is interesting is, what has been difficult is because our communication is often in person. If anyone that has been into our space, there's, ample amounts of room that we're shoulder to shoulder in a lot of contexts, if we're on set, or if all our brand managers are together, huddled around an iMac, looking at a creative, to send a client, for example. Like, we miss that. We miss those moments of serendipitous connection. And I think that's been probably the hardest thing. I think, I think for me personally, I'm missing breaks, because I feel like I feel like a robot just looking at my, Gmail accounts, and, and it's productive in some contexts, but it's also not productive, because what could have taken me 5 minutes, I have to wait asynchronously for an hour before I get feedback, so I think that's definitely been a challenge to our culture. I think that it has been really challenging in the sense of, because things have been moving so quickly. I think in the early days, we were just in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, especially from the leadership, it's like you have a hard time once you figured out what the plan is, even to communicate that to the rest of the team. It's just so much energy gets just caught in just trying to figure out what's next, and the unknown, and so many things changing. I think that's been really challenging. And it was interesting. Jacques and I had a really cool conversation with Gary Ridge, the CEO of WD-40. And he said something that was really profound. He actually emails his entire staff globally every single day, and sends them like an inspirational quote. And I was like, man, I don't know if that's where we need to be, but that was really important for Jacques and I to hear, because we kind of were like, what does communication look like, and what does it mean in this time? And how do we kind of bridge some gaps, in the midst of uncertainty? And how do we over communicate, knowing that some people don't need it, but some people do? And people are all on different parts of the spectrum of information. And some people have direct communication with supervisors, some people don't. And so I think that one thing that I think we're continuing to refine and learn, I think this is a work in progress for us, honestly, because we're just trying to figure out, okay, how do we get feedback from people? How do we listen to what their worries are? How do we validate them and see them in a efficient way, and how do we share? What's the best context for sharing what we know and what we don't know? And so whether that's at our weekly status meeting, is it appropriate to share there? Is it an email? Is it a video that Jacques sends out to the entire staff, giving some updates? Is it an inspirational quote? I think that's been interesting. And one of the things that I will say that I've had to think about a lot in our remote context, Priya, is that we have to be even more intentional with gathering data to then share it out. And I think a fun example that I've done I'm excited that our team has participated in is, at staff meetings once a week, when we were in the lobby together, you could kind of just give a quick shout out, and someone would be like, hey, I just want to, say, kudos to this person. And that's like really important to culture building, right? That's we need to hear that. We need to see that other people are engaged with one another, that they're appreciating each other, recognizing one another. When you're on a 35, 40 person Zoom call, it's kind of hard to do that. It's like if you're interrupting and you unmute and it's just awkward. And so in advance, every single week, I actually ask for people to submit shout outs to their staff members. And then I'll go through, curate it, and then give people an opportunity to speak up in our 30 minutes. It's very efficient, but I think it's important to feeling like recognized, especially in a time right now when people are more isolated than ever before. They might be living by themselves. Maybe they're working with a tough client and they don't have backup and support. I think we need to start thinking of creative ways to give people the voice to recognize each other. I think that's what it means to be a people first organization, to take time out of our busy schedules to be intentional with how we support one another in that way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that leads me right into my next question. I think you gave a great example of it just now in terms of what our staff meetings look like and how we've sort of shifted to incorporate the same ideas. But do you have any other examples of things that we as a company took for granted when we were in a space physically together that now we're working to sort of reignite in this new remote sort of virtual life we're in?
Yeah. I'm laughing because I didn't get permission to say it, but it's okay. We had a cool meeting with all the leads of our departments, and I did a really fun facilitated kind of conversation. And I asked that question. I said, what do you miss about being in the office? And I think 3 out of 8 people said they missed seeing Jacques dance randomly in the middle of the day. And I think that just sums up our culture. I think there's something beautiful about having those spontaneous fun moments. We're a creative agency. We have to have fun. We have to have moments of, spontaneity. On Valentine's Day, we ordered a golf cart and we called it the Cupid cart, and we drove people to Salt and Straw to get ice cream on Raindrop. And we decked it out, and people were like, what, what is this? Like going down Little Italy, And I mean, just even us being intentional with having a space in Little Italy where there's restaurants all around and, really cool experiences there. We value unrivaled experiences for clients, but ultimately our employees. That doesn't mean we have like an infinite budget to just splurge on people. We're not Google or Facebook, but we try to make those moments special. We create space that allows people to feel connection. We've got a great lobby where people can have lunch together. We have one-on-ones. We do walk and talks all the time. You know what I mean? That's been the beautiful part about it, which is, I think we all desperately miss, being able to walk down the street, grab a cup of coffee on a break, and just kind of ruminate and think and process and say, hey, let me get your opinion. I think that kind of stuff is what we miss. We don't have water cooler talks. We have coffee cooler talks. We actually walk across the street and grab great coffee or cold brew. And I think that to me is what's been hard. And I think we are all missing elements of that, and as those that I've talked to, that they miss that, just the simplicity of grabbing lunch together or sitting down and chatting about people's weekends. We have to be intentional. We have to create that space. I think also too, I think that there's enough research to show that people have already in our digital ecosystem, people already have a hard time creating kind of healthy boundaries with work-home balance. I mean, that was already a reality, but as people shift their entire office and their entire world to their living space, whether that's distraction with kids or being a stay-at-home parent and also like a teacher, stay-at-home teacher, homeschool teacher, or to even just having no space in between. I think that we miss that. I mean, even just being able to park near our office, walk and have that mental checkout or recentering, and then as I being able to kind of leave a couple things at the office and know like, hey, I'm transitioning, and my time is going to look differently as I get back to a place of rest and recharge. And I think we are, I don't know how my team is doing, but I know that for me, that's been something I've had to wrestle with, is how do I clock off, or clock out, and just really be in a place where I can kind of recharge, because we're not infinite batteries, you know what I mean? We need space for that. So I definitely take that. I think there's something missing in that, and I'm looking forward to continuing supporting our team to how do we continue to do that efficiently, knowing that this is for a season, at least for now, for our foreseeable future, and how do we best support some of those expectations?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I definitely think for me, this work-life balance has been very interesting, especially being new to a company, new to a job during this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I personally have definitely taken for granted how much, just to your point, a commute to work, leaving work, what leaving that space does
Yeah.
mentally,
Yep.
subconsciously
Yep.
for you. But I think what you were focusing on earlier, that for me, I've really been trying to intentionally think about during this time is, what does gratitude look like and what do
Mm,
simple joys look like? I
yes.
think when our lives look different and there isn't a global pandemic
Yeah.
and we're not all trying to function in a way that we're not used to, it's easier for us to find those pieces along the way
Yeah.
during any given day.
Yeah.
And I think I personally have had to be more intentional about searching for gratitude and searching
Yeah.
for these simple joys.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those pieces you just shared speak
Yeah.
to that, and speak
Yeah.
to how much easier that can be when we're not in a time like this. So that's
Yes.
super helpful.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I feel like you've touched on this throughout,
Yeah.
but maybe if you could just summarize in a
Yeah.
couple of key places,
Yeah.
what have you learned about our culture in light
Mm.
of this disruption?
Yeah. Great question. You know, culture is a really complex um, definition. It's hard to define culture, you know?
Yeah.
But what I would say is that I think what Raindrop has learned, and I hope a lot of other organizations in this time has learned, is that we are more resilient than we think. I think that, you know, 2 years ago, if you had asked Raindrop if you could get through a global pandemic, I don't know the answer to that, or we would be scared to even attempt to answer that question. And I think what we've learned is that our people are incredibly gifted and incredibly generous. When we talk about partnering generously, I think I've only seen people going above and beyond their required job description, and I love that. That's what I hope we can build upon. Now we have to find balance, we have to give rest, we have to take time off, we have to have fun and play. But I think that this has been a refining season for us, in the sense of allowing us to sharpen that edge of ours of saying we can do this. Like we're stronger than we thought we could be, you know, and we have what it takes to get through some of the most intense seasons of that our world has ever known, you know, or like in this time period, you know. So I think that's been really encouraging for me. I think also too, what I've learned about our culture is that people are what make and break culture. And I think that's why, you know, the leadership has brought me on to think about that, to invest into that, to champion that, you know, because I think that when people take when leaders take their people for granted, it really shows. And when they don't value them, there is it creates such a dysfunctional culture. And you can say all you want about, oh, we respect our team and we like our team, but like, do your actions back up that? You know, and I think just in my experience working with leadership, and even those that I've gotten a chance to interact with the last several months, I just see a deep, like a deep generosity and a care for each person, like personally, not just like, oh, they're a cog in a machine and like we just need to like get the most out of them and then like find somebody else. And you know what I mean? I think there really is a heart to say, how do we invest into our people? How do we care for our people authentically and how do we think about their development and growth? It's hard, Priya. You know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
complex when you get more than 15 people. You can't know everyone's challenges and circumstances and their needs, and yet I think we're trying to do that better. You know, that requires a lot of different elements, whether that's more efficient processes, better communication strategies, you know, a high level of trust, which I haven't talked about yet, you know, but having that trust is vital to culture, you know, and when you're remote, you have to become even more clear on and hopefully create those moments of trust building experiences with each other. And so we're at a pivotal time right now, you know, as an agency. I think a lot of organizations are. A lot of things have been disrupted. The snow globe has been flipped upside down. And I am really impressed that our team has been able to settle slightly. I think we're in that reset phase. You know, we've survived. Now we're at that reset phase. And I'm hoping that we can really think about what it means to thrive in the days to come. And so, yeah, you know, we were more resilient than I thought we could be. But and the other side of it is that I think we have what it takes to get to that next level at Raindrop. You know what I mean? Like, that's what excites me is, you know, when we talk about owning your future, owning our future, man, there's some businesses, some clients, some conversations that we've been having to say, how do we take it to the next level? You know, and that is exciting. And I know we have a lot to still process and grieve and be in the space right now, but the hope is that we don't want to stay there. We don't want to be stuck there. We have so much more work to do. You know, I think, you know, even in light of all that's happening here, Priya, you know, we moved very quickly to putting together a DEI committee, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion committee. And that's been obviously with recent events with Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. And we want to respond, and we want to take this seriously, and we want, and the more work we can do, the good work we can do, and more clients we get to work with, the more impact we can have on our community with even our hiring processes, et cetera. So I'm excited. I think we've been really agile and reactive where we can be, but also proactive where we need to be, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that leads me into our final question today, to end on a positive note. And you kind of ended this question on a positive note, so I'm excited to keep that momentum going. But let's talk about some of the gifts. I think it's really easy to focus on what's been difficult during this time. And absolutely, there's a huge weight on all of us in kind of trying to process that and move through that. But I think that they're, again, thinking about gratitude and thinking about simple joys. Let's just take a moment to talk about what some of the surprising gifts have looked like for Raindrop during this time.
That's great. One of my favorite questions I was ever asked in an interview. So an interviewer or interviewee, like a potential employee, asked us, and she I think it was a woman. She said, "What does success look like for me here?" You know, and I think the response I gave was, if you can feel like you can make genuine friendships here and treat people that way, that's what success means. And I think for me, the gift has been, I deeply miss, and I know the leadership team and I know others in our organization have expressed this to me, there's genuine relationships here. There's genuine friendships here. And there's a genuine sense of like, let me help you. What can I do for you? I mean, even the other day I went to the office and we had some of our videographers there, and they were like, hey, how can I help you find this? You know, and they were just I mean, they didn't have to, you know what I mean? But there was like this need to help one another because we treat each other like we're good friends, you know? And I hope that is, and that's true. So the gift has been just a recognition that I still have friends at Raindrop, and I hope that others have experienced that as well. But the other thing is, I have reflected on the reality that work is a gift in and of itself. I don't think that work is a right. I think a lot of people feel that way, you know, whether that's the way they approach it by saying, I deserve, you owe me, these kinds of that kind of language. And I hope that honestly, my generation of millennials can experience this and take this moment as a gift, as a learning lesson, saying, man, your job is a gift. Like, you don't deserve it. Like, you don't have to have it. There's so many other people that are more qualified than you. Like, you know, we can, and yet when you're in the position that you're in, wherever you are, that moment, the fact that you're there means you matter, and that it truly is a gift. And so I hope people, I think you approach work differently that way. When you kind of have that mindset, when you're like, I don't have to be here right now. Like, they don't have to hire me. They don't have to pay me. Like, and yet they want me here. And that is like a beautiful thing that I think could be honestly career changing for people, where they can say, wow, I remember 2020 and that was hell. And yet, like, later down my career, I can speak to that, and I can remember those moments, and yet feeling like work is a good thing, and it's fun, and I get to work and create together. So I hope that helps people that are listening. And I hope that also helps just leaders kind of think about that mindset and perspective as they help shape their workplaces and their culture, knowing that when you create that kind of mindset, people want to give their best because they're choosing to show up in a different light.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. That's a great note for us to end on. I look forward to working and creating with you in the months to come.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Danny, for being here. This has been such a valuable conversation and really such a nice beacon of light in this series. So I hope our viewers get a chance to take something from this, feel a little bit of that hope, and are able to sort of apply this as we continue into this world of virtual working with our colleagues.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Danny, thank you for your time. It's been so valuable, and we'll see you here next week.